Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined right now by the one and the only Jaden. Jaden, welcome to the show, man. It's been a while.
Hey, it's been a while. It's definitely your pleasure to have the solar-powered love machine once again part of the Alliance, guys. DK and I know you kind of replaced us both with a couple of friends of yours, but we're back to take our spots back as the original Alliance guys. At least one of us are.
Now, hold on. Hold the damn phone. The Alliance guys will always be DKM, Jaden, and J-Cal, and occasionally Big Daryl. That's it. Everything else
And don't
is
forget
something.
DK's cat.
Yeah, right? What was his cat's name? I forgot.
I don't know.
Little.
Couldn't think of anything funny.
So, okay, I know that we've been trying to do this podcast here for a while, and we're having some tech issues, so we're going to just try to wing it, see how we can go with it. But first and foremost, the NWA Power premiered just a mere 2 days ago on YouTube, on Facebook. So some pretty impressive numbers, if I could say so myself. Over 350,000 people have watched the NWA Power from the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios in Atlanta. Jaden, you watched it. What were your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts, and I can't wait till we go over step by step, inch by inch, to see what I think from top to bottom. But I actually, overall, I very much say I enjoyed the show. There's some things that I liked, some things I love, some things I could do without, but I'm definitely a fan of the product right now, and I can't wait to see more.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, it felt like for the last 2 years that there's been many detractors from Billy Corgan, or as they like to say, William Patrick Corgan and Mr. David Lagana, with regards to the NWA. Some people said, what did they buy? They just bought 3 letters. What does that mean? A lot of people were curious if the NWA would ever be meaningful again. And being there live in Atlanta, I got to tell you, it was some of the most exciting times I've had in a studio format for pro wrestling. The fans really seemed energetic. The fans really seemed into it. Jaden, I know that you had a few statements about the fan interaction. What did you think about the fans in Atlanta?
All right, now I know we've had this conversation, but they felt disingenuous often with the clapping and the oohing and ahhing. I'm always going to say that I absolutely hate wrestling fans that just reply to the spots, not to what's going on. And there was some quiet in between the oohs and ahs, but it's another crowd that responds to the high spots, not necessarily to the emotion of the action. And also, I'm not a fan of the fact that they clapped at every single thing. This ain't the Family Feud. You don't have to clap even when there's a bad answer, Good answer, good answer. No, you idiot. You got it wrong. That's what they should say.
How about Jose? No, you're right. The show that I was there for the tapings, I was there for both night 1 and 2 of the TV tapings. I don't want to say the show is heavily produced. I don't know what was filmed in what order, but I mean, there were times in the studio they would have us cheer to kind of open up the show, but then they would cut to Jim Cornette and Joe Galli speaking to the camera and talking about the upcoming show, and there wasn't the same crowd noise. So again, I know they did, they kind of did their Hollywood magic, and the show is produced. It's a studio show, but it's still a produced show. But overall, a lot of those chants, I hear what you're saying. They felt disingenuous, but they were pretty organic. For example, NWA chants broke out often and early, and it didn't feel like it was forced. There was nobody encouraging the fan to start chanting that. I was one of the first people to start saying "Let them fight" between Jocephus and James Storm, so you could blame me for that one. But Jim Cornette did say, prior to the start of the TV tapings on both nights, that the fans were a part of the show. He made that perfectly clear, and that it was his hopes that win, lose, or draw, cheer a guy, boo a guy, they wanted audience participation. So maybe that did come off a little disingenuous on TV. However, I still feel like it was just part of the show being produced.
Again, I like you, I think it was a little well too produced. It didn't feel natural. And again, I've never been a big fan of wrestling fans reacting to the spots, not to what's going on, not to the emotion. But that was a minor thing, I guess, is what it is. Like I said, it's not the Family Feud. I'm tired of people clapping at everything, but definitely for the action itself. First of all, we'll start off. I love the look of everything.
Yeah, the view of the studio, which I'm going to try to put up right here on the camera. The view of the studio was terrific, man. It was a throwback. It harkened to Jim Crockett Promotions. The year we kept hearing a lot was 1986. It kind of felt like it was right out of 1986. Marquez is certainly no Gordon Solie, and he'd be the first one to tell you, but he did a pretty commendable job being the host, the broadcast journalist, if you will. I think Joe Galley and Jim Cornette did a fantastic job calling the matches. You had your play-by-play, your color. It was in sync. They, they've worked a few times together before, but it was nice to see them, anchoring the broadcast. And then, what did you think about the tag team, the Dawsons?
They were interesting. They squashed a couple of guys. One of them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was Saul Renaro. Was he in that?
Yes. Yeah, that was him.
Saul Renaro. He's NWA Anarchy alumni. He worked for Ring of Honor in the past. More talented than I believe somebody who should get squashed is, but they were a throwback to the big, raw-boned, hillbilly red type of wrestlers of the yesteryear, and they showed a lot of power moves. They squashed their opponents, and they got over. People say, I can't remember who I was talking to. Somebody said they didn't think the enhancement talent matches were of, I believe, like, a lot of people complaining about the enhancement talent guys, or the enhancement talent matches, but I think that was one of my favorite parts of it. Honestly, how can you beat stars if you don't beat anybody?
Right.
And back in the 80s, there was very rarely any competitive matches on television.
The thing is, too, this is introduction to the NWA. This is episode 1, right? So storylines are kind of just being established right now. They have to build up some of this talent somehow, because most of these guys have been unknown to, the Dawsons weren't on the 10 pounds of gold. I mean, they were at the Crockett Cup. They were a part of the wild card tag team, the battle royal that set up, Tom Latimer and Royce Isaacs into that Crockett Cup tournament. They were there, but I mean, the NWA hadn't really established a lot of these guys. And as we'll talk about further along, Caleb Konely, who is well known on the East Coast, especially in North Carolina, isn't really a household name. So when a lot of these people are turning into the NWA for the first time and have been watching 10 pounds of gold for the last 2 years, and they're aware of Eli Drake, and they know who James Storm is, whether it be from Impact or from his time now in the NWA as North American champion, or of course Nick Aldis, the national treasure. These guys have been established throughout months, even years, on that 10 pounds of podcast. But a guy like Caleb Konely, or in this case the Dawson brothers, they haven't been established yet. So they have to build up to this stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the Dawsons. They don't tickle my fancy, but it was cool to see something different. And like you said, seeing these guys get established.
Yeah, again, I don't think they're going to be anybody's going to be burning the doors down to see the Dawsons in ring action right now. You have to establish your roster, and that's what studio wrestling was great for. There was 2 hours at 6:05 on TBS. There was 2 hours on WMAL. I can't remember the call letters, but the ones in Memphis for Memphis wrestling with Jerry the
Right.
King Lawler. There was an hour in Southwest Championship Wrestling. There was, they had these time to establish these wrestlers and to get them over, and that's what promos are for. That's what the squash matches are for, so they can showcase their individual moves and people start to realize what they can do. It's not to be competitive. It's to actually just physically let them show their repertoire so they can get their moves over, and then they get into the interview podium and be able to talk themselves and talk fans into the building. That's one thing I like that's a lot of wrestling companies aren't doing. They're talking directly to the camera, which means they're talking directly to you. I have a feeling James E. Cornette had a little bit into that because not a lot of other wrestling companies do that. Ever watch a lot of other wrestling shows where the wrestlers aren't necessarily talking to the fans. They're just more worried about cutting their promo and getting their catchphrases in and stuff like that.
Right.
This felt more like that Eli Drake and Nick Aldis and everybody were talking to me.
And we'll get to it in a minute, but the promo that Nick Aldis cut prior to his match on that card was electric. And it really, like, being in the audience, I felt it. Man. The guy sitting next to me, we were all NWA fans. Everyone was there to see the NWA, and it was electric. And maybe even the best. What was that?
Every time you go, it's electric. I want to go boogie, boogie, boogie.
Oh, Jesus. The crowd was definitely behind Aldis, and that promo certainly solidified it. And really, I think that might have been the best promo he's cut since he's been world's champion.
You get a passion when you're in front of a more intimate crowd like that. You get a passion when you're in student wrestling that you don't get in, like, say, an arena wrestling. You have to play the four sides in arena wrestling, and especially if you're on recording and TV, it's more like the fans are just there in the background. They're not part of the event as much as, say, the fans are, which, they're the noise that makes the action go. You could put the same studio wrestling on with no crowd and with no interaction. It just doesn't have that same appeal. But it's an energy and electric in that type of environment that you don't get anywhere any other form of wrestling.
And this is true. The next matchup, again, we're talking about promos, the Eli Drake match, where Eli Drake took on, again, Caleb Konely. Now, for me, and for you, Jaden, you're familiar with Caleb Konely. This guy isn't some
jabroni, and I hate to use the Sheik's expression so fluidly, but this is a guy who actually can work and can cut promos and can wrestle well. I was kind of surprised to see him working enhancement, but as you'll see through the TV tapings over the next 9 weeks, obviously the character grows, much like most of the characters on the program. But he looked fantastic in his match with Eli Drake, and I know Eli Drake is a great wrestler. I know he cuts a great promo. He worked pretty hard to make Caleb Konely look pretty good in this match.
So, Caleb Konely, an incredibly talented wrestler. Unfortunately, the only time I ever seen him live, he damn near killed himself in a Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators Championship match against Chance Prophet. He dived and got his head stuck in the ropes and broke his neck. But
that's brutal. Obviously he's okay, but wow. Legitimately broke.
He didn't break his neck, but it looked like he...
Oh, jeez. Wow. So, Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jaden. What? Give me more thoughts on Caleb Konely.
The NWA Legends Convention back in North Carolina, where he almost killed himself and dived out of the ring on Chance Prophet. He's a very talented guy, and he got a lot in there in a match against Eli Drake. That was not a squash match at all.
No, the whole thing about again with Eli Drake, his role within the company right now is still kind of being told on television, and the same could be said for Caleb Konely, because it was a competitive match. Caleb did get offense in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens down the road for both of these guys. Now, remember, the TV was taped for 9 weeks of programming. So essentially, all of this that they've already shot leads up to the pay-per-view that is supposed to happen on December 14th, which I believe is a Saturday, which will air live on Fight, and it'll be the conclusion of some of the action you'll see over the next 9 weeks. We also saw the wild cards in action. And now, for those of you who don't know who the wild cards are, it's Thomas Latimer, and Impact he was known as Bram. Obviously, he doesn't go by that anymore. His tag team partner, Royce Isaacs, he's out of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. More importantly, he's been the Hollywood Heritage Champion and the United Wrestling Network TV Champion. And the duo competed at the Crockett Cup as the wild card tag team. They were the ones that were the last 2 men standing in that battle royal, last eliminating the boys, I think, if my memory serves me. They were able to defeat the team of the War Kings, which was the heavily favored Jax Dane and Crimson, to advance to the finals where they would face Villains Inc., and that would be PCO, Brody King. Of course, Brody and PCO would win the match, not defend the titles for a couple of months in Ring of Honor, and eventually our friends Thomas Latimer and Royce Isaac would win the belts with help from Camille, interestingly enough. And their first match as champions was actually in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but their NWA debut, they did show up with the tag titles. It was a non-title match, and Jaden, I thought they looked terrific. Thoughts on Latimer and Isaacs?
Oh yeah. I've always kind of like Isaacs. Latimer, he's done a few things that made me a little bit less of a fan for him, but they looked
Sure.
good as a tag team. They looked absolutely great as a tag team. They have this unique look. They have a unique style. They're not a bookend tag team like, the 80s were known for, but I definitely enjoyed what they brought to the table.
So they're not the traditional bookend tag team. I completely agree with you on that. What else did you have to say about Latimer and Isaacs?
I know, what is it? Latimer's from what is he, from England?
Yeah.
Wales maybe, or something. I'm not sure, but he has a unique accent too, and maybe in Scotland, or maybe he's because he does wear a kilt. But
Scotland makes sense.
Yeah, he's got an interesting accent too. It adds unique to his look. That's one thing I like about the NWA roster that they have shown so far too, is everybody kind of looks different. There is no cookie cutter. Everybody's the same. I think the promo was a little bit more interesting than the match, though, personally.
Talking about the promo where Mr. Eddie Kingston came out and reintroduced himself to Tommy Boy, right?
Yeah. Eddie Kingston. Here's my little history with Eddie Kingston. He used to be part of a tag team called the Blackjacks, so it's interesting he's going against the Wild Cards. That was my first introduction to Eddie Kingston. Then he split off into his own and became a solo wrestler, really kind of made a name for himself with a feud with Tommy Dreamer, and then all of a sudden exploded. Now, I was a fan of him early. I didn't like him in his early Ring of Honor because they just didn't use him right. Honestly, I said I didn't like him, but in reality, in retrospect, Ring of Honor definitely didn't use him to his fullest capability initially. And then he kind of branched off into other things and really, really did start getting into his own. And he cut the most real promo there. Eddie Kingston is not a wordsmith so much. He doesn't spout off lyrical genius, but what he says is real, and what he says has passion behind it, and it just makes you watch. He may be the most interesting interview and promo I've seen in the NWA so far, and that says a lot. I just like it. Homicide's not saying anything. That's actually kind of interesting, but letting Eddie Kingston do all the talking. But Eddie Kingston and Homicide, that's going to be a tag team that everybody needs to keep an eye out for. I've been watching both for a long time. I've been in the ring, not in the ring, but I've been in an arena with both of them in capacity of working events. And very talented, very excellent. Just, I think right there, that's where the no-nonsense, straight-shooting promo style of the NWA that's not scripted, I think Eddie Kingston is going to shine most bright in that situation.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. And let me use the word I know you were searching for, authenticity. as real as it gets. Eddie Kingston isn't some wrestling prodigy. The guy had to work for everything he has, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. Homicide. I just had to do that because I've been wanting to do that for about 15 years. Homicide is great. You're right. He didn't cut any kind of promo. He was more or less just the extra muscle. Looked great in the match, and I popped hard, Jaden. I popped hard for the NWA t-shirt. No, not the National Wrestling Alliance. I can't say the words at it, but what it is, but it's the Ends with Attitude, and that was pretty cool to see the throwback shirt. I know that I get a lot of heat. Is it heat when fellow fans talk crap about wrestling? I get a lot of heat from people who say, well, Billy Corgan bought the NWA, so when are we getting that Easy E record? Look, guys, we understand there's an acronym for a rap group and an acronym for the wrestling group. And I think it's clever and funny that Mr. Homicide wore that shirt to the ring.
I think if I ever get on the thing, I'll start wearing a Northwest Airlines shirt.
Yeah, I think there. See, and there you go.
Even
I think they get bought out by Delta. Yeah, I think Delta bought them out.
Still, I'll find a throwback.
There you go. So we've had a couple tag team matches. We've had a singles match. We had some kind of absurdness with Jocephus, and I know you're not the biggest Jocephus fan. Yeah.
Why did they have to go friggin' Benny Hill? I was waiting for and it was stupid. Here's a guy who's got some. All right, here's a guy who's got some say in what goes on, and instead of putting the attention on people deserve it, he has to put it on himself. He's not entertaining. I don't understand why anybody seems to like him. He's a ripoff of a ripoff of a ripoff. Is he supposed to be Bruiser Brody? Is he supposed to be Bray Wyatt? Is he supposed to be Matt Hardy? Is he supposed to be Raven? Because he sucks at all four of it, whatever he's trying to be.
Wow. So why don't you tell me how you really feel?
I would, but last time you lambasted me for keeping it PG. So
with Jocephus, and to your point, I think they kind of addressed that in James Storm's promo. Like, you're out here playing wrestler. When I do it for 290 days out of the year on the road, I mean, there's some validity to that. And, I don't want the Kingdomnites to come crashing down on my palace door. I don't want those 3%ers to look me in the eye. But
yeah, you can send those 3%ers after you and his bald-headed friend. But honestly, what is he going to do? Bore you to death?
Read me a book. But what I was trying to say was James Storm did kind of address that in the promo, right? I mean, he kind of said that, he's on the road 290 days a year, and Jocephus is sitting behind a desk, and this is just a weekend warrior type thing, and this is just just part of the show, I guess. James Storm made quick work of him. The national title wasn't on the line. Jocephus was begging for Storm, us in the crowd, and I'm sure you were watching at home on TV, assumed he was talking about Tim Storm, but the other Storm approached the ring, and we had an impromptu match that lasted all of about 5 minutes, actually even less, because they rang the bell after the first super kick. 1, 2, 3, it was over. Were you happy with the finish of that match, Jaden?
Yeah, it was 5 minutes or whatever, and it was like 9 minutes too long. Did you see how blown up he was? All he did was run around. Now, he normally runs his mouth. That's the most physical activity I've seen him do. He's just not. There's so many people out there that could be investing TV time in, and why invest in somebody who's like the black hole of charisma?
Well, these questions will be answered, I guess. If you guys have feedback you'd like to leave for Jaden or myself here on the Alliance Guys podcast, you could log into the Anchor app and you could actually record a message. Now, if you don't want to log into Anchor, you can actually do it from the website. It's Anchor FM. Is that what it is, Jaden? Anchor.fm.
I believe it's Anchor.fm, yeah.
And again, this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to try to do this once a week where we talk about NWA POWERRR, because it's got the 3 R's. Now, obviously, the big match of the night. 2 years basically in the making. I remember the night, December 9th, in New Jersey, not far from where you're sitting right now, Jaden, at Combat Zone Wrestling. It was our champion, Tim Storm, who was defeated by Nick Aldis. Now, what led up to that match was an empty arena fight in the Impact Zone against the aforementioned Jocephus. A victory in Hollywood where Tim Storm defended his title successfully against Nick Aldis. But time finally caught up to the man who was on top of the mountain. And, Tuesday night, he had his final shot, one last shot to wrestle for the World's Heavyweight Championship. Jaden, you saw the match. What did you think?
I think Nick Aldis took Tim Storm to school. And I think he sent him to Saturday detention. I think he threw the book at him. I could probably think of some more cliches. But honestly, it was a good match. Tim Storm definitely showed a lot. A lot of people. I remember watching I believe it was a Wrestling with Regret episode, and they were talking about the NWA. I think they were actually talking about Billy Corgan buying it, and they said, "Well, who is the NWA champion?" And they showed a picture of Tim Storm, and he goes, "Who?" And people were joking. They thought Tim Storm was a joke. He was I guess the only option the old regime would have. But once they got the personality and once they got the 10 pounds of gold on him, he's shown he was a very deserving champion. And I think in this match, he most definitely showed that he was a deserving NWA champion. He gave it all, and that match was very good. I enjoyed it. It was probably way better than the abortion they had in New Jersey at the Combat Zone Wrestling, because I went over like a popcorn fart in church. But it was just, I enjoyed it.
So let's actually take a second to talk about Tim Storm, because a lot of people who are watching a lot of people who tuned into NWA Power might not have ever have seen a 10 pounds of gold episode, and certainly not the early episodes. Tim Storm, like you said, Jaden, was the last champion from the previous regime. What does that mean? So before William Patrick Corgan purchased the NWA was owned by Bruce Tharp. We won't ever speak very positive of Mr. Bruce Tharp here on this podcast, but the one thing that he was able to do is to create one entity that was the NWA. And all the years before, the NWA was multiple promotions, and under Bruce Tharp's regime, the NWA was one entity. During that time, they had some pretty terrific world champions. We had Rob Conway. We had Satoshi Kojima, who actually signed the 10 pounds of replica over here to my left. We also had Hiroshi Tenzan, and one of my personal favorites who also signed the 10 pounds of replica over here, Mr. Jax Dane. And Jax Dane, when he was being built to become the next world champion, he'd won the North American title. He won the national title. He unified those championships. So when he became champion, he was a Triple Crown champion, essentially. And they started doing the same thing for Mr. Tim Storm. His path to the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship came through that North American title. To get to that moment was a big deal for the NWA. At that point, the relationship with New Japan had come to an end, and the biggest defense for Tim Storm prior to William Patrick Corgan purchasing the NWA was that defense in Diamond Star Wrestling in Japan. Now, it's if you've seen any of the footage or seen any of the photos, that match in Japan was about the equivalent of a lower level indie show. I'm sure, Jade, you've been to mud shows that were much, much smaller in capacity than this show. It wasn't a highlight per se, but it was an opportunity for Tim Storm to take the title out of the United States and defend it internationally, something that is a time-honored tradition for most world heavyweight champions. So Tim Storm's time as world champion wasn't remarkable until really
gold, and that's where he did get that momentum. I sat down and spoke with Mr. Tim Storm during the NWA press conference, and he told me, he never sits there and writes a promo. Everything that he talks about comes directly from the heart. And so when he cut that promo about the NWA being his mountaintop, that came from the heart. That wasn't something scripted in the back. Nobody came up with that in creative. That was him. So obviously, being the world heavyweight champion for the NWA was a big deal for Tim Storm, something he treasured and something he cherished. And when he lost that, it was a big deal. So this match had a big fight feel, and it was episode 1 of NWA Power.
So the long history of Tim Storm has come to conclusion. We know that he'll never for the 10 pounds of gold as long as Nick Aldis is world champion. Jaden, the stipulation that he would never get the challenge for that title kind of felt convoluted to me. What are your thoughts on that stipulation?
It actually has roots in history of wrestling, and especially the NWA. There has been people who lost the match and they weren't able to get another championship match, or the champion refused to wrestle them ever again. Once they, if they didn't win the title, they refused to ever wrestle them again. And there always seemed to be a way to come back where they end up getting a championship match anyway. I think it's a good way to end a particular part of that story. Now the rubber match was won by Nick Aldis. He can move on to other things. There are other challengers out there. Obviously, James Storm is a good quality opponent. Eli Drake. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that you're going to see soon with the future broadcasts that make excellent challengers for Nick Aldis in the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. So, there's no... in reality, Storm should go on the back of the line. Unfortunately, he may never be able to reach that top gold again. But there's not saying there's not other things Tim Storm can't be good with. He could stand side by side with James Storm, and they can create a little hurricane.
Only if they use that song "Rock You Like a Hurricane" as their entrance music, right?
Yeah.
What I found very interesting about the show again is this is leading up to the pay-per-view. And instead of this being a pay-per-view style match, it was used as the main event for their first television programming. Now, I remember when the first SmackDown aired on UPN Channel 13 locally here in Southern California, that they had to bring out all the marbles for that match. And I believe it was Rock versus Triple H with Shawn Michaels as special referee. And they had to do that to make it a big-time feel. And so I know that's why the NWA did it, because it's really the best storyline that they've worked on since day one. But I was a little disappointed to see that it's over. It's over. But all in all, I thought the show was terrific. I will be tuning in next week. Jaden, are you going to be tuning in at 6:05 on NWA's YouTube page?
More likely I'll end up watching it sometime later in the night, but I would definitely be looking forward to checking it out. I'm looking forward to week 2. Reading the results ahead, I wish I didn't, but I kind of know what's going on. That said, there's some people that I'm really looking forward to see how they look. Couple of people that have been to various places, and it almost looks like an Impact reunion in some ways, but there's some other faces out there that's really good. By the way, you forgot to mention anything about the NWA World Women's Championship.
You're right. And did I forget? Was there a match in week 1? Did I forget about that?
There was no match, but that weekend, I think a little throwback to Mildred Burke was given to Miss Allison Kay.
Yeah, and it's funny. David Logano will be the first one to tell you that he hates the belt tweets. They just bother him for whatever reason. And that title, that little glimpse of the belt, some people like myself thought it was going to be the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Other people thought it was going to be a TV title. But it was, in fact, a throwback to Mildred Burke, like you said, Jaden. It was what would you even call that? The 5 pounds of copper, nickel? I don't know. But it had a picture of Allison Kay right in the middle. Like you said, the throwback to Mildred. And, that's what the NWA is, right? It's a throwback. What did you think of the belt?
It was interesting. And to me, even though I knew it was Mildred Burke, it's still synonymous to me with the Fabulous Moolah. But and she doesn't have the best reputation in the world of women wrestling right now. But it was kind of interesting. I like the NWA throwbacks mostly. I mean, I know a lot of promoters, even Dr. Lawrence Zirconium, kind of models his belts, even though they're modern versions. He uses a throwback as the initial design in Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. So it can happen. You pay homage to championship belts that you grew up with and which have inspired you either as a wrestler or a promoter or as a fan. You tend to stick toward, what brought you and brought your attention and stuff like that. And that's definitely the old school feel. That seems to be the theme of the NWA. Tradition with a future, I guess, is the best way to put it. And I do like it. Honestly, it's never going to be on the best looking championship belt category, but I think it's perfect for what it needs to be. And it's a lot better than the boob belt that she had before.
Sure. Okay, so that brings us to the one last thing I want to talk about, because over the course of that weekend, there were fans there holding the old school Jim Crockett Promotions television titles, and the rumors are that there might be an inclusion of a TV title in NWA for these Power TV tapings. Now, J-Cal already has his TV title, and it's this pin right here that you guys can win by just subscribing to this show and sliding into this guy's old DMs about you wanting this belt. So you could just leave a comment right here on this video and say, I want the TV title, and we'll enter you into a drawing. As long as you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, we're trying to get over 100 subscribers. And once we hit that, we're going to give away the luxurious Championship Wrestling from Hollywood crafted NWA TV Championship. Jaden, I know you have one of these. What are your thoughts on that little mid-card enamel pin?
I look forward to it's a shame I already have one, or I try to enter. Can I unsubscribe and resubscribe to get myself in there? But
well, anyone who is already subscribed is entered, but employees of the alliance-wrestling.com are not able to win the award. So I'm sorry, Sherry, but you've been disqualified.
Employees, I can't wait to get my paycheck. I've been waiting for that for a while. But
you're gonna have to send out an address. Yeah, it's in the mail.
It's in the mail.
Hot dog. That's a hot dog and a handshake.
Wow. All right. Hope you wash your hands first. I've seen where they've been. But
thanks.
But yeah, actually, no, it's an awesome, beautiful little memento of that pin. It's something great for a throwback of professional wrestling history. It's one of my favorite championships, even though I still say that it looks better on the black leather than the red. I know that's something we disagree with. Yes. Just like, what's your favorite, what's the best kind of bear?
Build-A-Bear.
Build-A-Bear?
So I got kids. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. Again, we'll try to get back here next week and talk about the next episode of NWA Power. Hopefully we'll be joined by DKM if he can figure out this advanced technology. But Jaden, I know that you help out the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. What's next for Dog? How can people follow them? What's going on with that promotion?
Well, on Saturday night, October 26th, at the Max Fit Sports Center, located at 240 Delsey Drive South in beautiful uptown Glassboro, New Jersey, Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiator returns with 3 championship matches and a card loaded from top to bottom. The main event, the Dog Championship. Breaker Morant will be defending against second-generation superstar Brian Pillman Jr. You'll also see a World Wrestling Grand Prix last man standing between the Incredible Huck, William Huckabee, and the Fat Daddy, Biggie Biggs, former WWGP champion. You're going to see that last man standing to one last match to end this feud. One man wins, leaves with, actually, one man leaves as champion. I don't think either man's going to win after that kind of matchup. Not only that, you will see an Irish whooping match between Pat Shamrock and Daredevil Dave Dahl. There's going to be lumberjacks outside the ring with straps. If anybody tries to escape, they get whooped. You see what happens. You can check out the Dog Pro Wrestling Facebook page, or go check out dogprowrestling.com, or go check out the Instagram at dog_unleashed, or Dog Wrestling on Facebook, and I think it's Dog Wrestling on Twitter also. You can see that video and all kinds of information coming up for this card. Tickets are only $15, and you can check it out. You can get your tickets soon at the Max Fit Sports Center, or you can get them the day of the event. It's all ages appropriate. Whether you're 8 or 80, you'll have a blast. Nobody insults your intelligence. It's just good old school professional wrestling, the way wrestling should be. I hate that term. I should never use it again.
And if you guys, if you're watching the show, you're probably already doing so, but make sure you visit alliance-wrestling.com. And again, you can follow us on all the social medias at the Alliance blog. And that's Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitch, and soon to be YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and we will say good night now, and I'll see you at the matches. Thank you, sir.